Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of your favorite interior design podcast. My name is Stephanie Stewart, your host, and today we are going to be talking about wallpaper. I make a promise to all of my clients, and that is that there will be wallpaper. I love wallpaper. It's one of my core values, and I have wallpaper all over my home, and I love to put wallpaper in my projects. Wallpaper is not like your grandma's old wallpaper. I know a lot of people have some kind of adverse reaction to wallpaper. There's all different kinds. There are different levels of wallpaper where you can have a very big, bold, bright pattern. You can have them foil, you can have fabric, you can have vinyl, but also there's wallpaper that is just for added texture. So there's all different types and levels of the kind of wallpaper that you get. But today we're not going to be talking about styles of wallpaper. We're going to be talking about if you do want to install wallpaper in your home and you're not really sure where to start, then this is the episode for you. This episode, we're going to talk about how to ask your wallpaper installer for a bid and the kind of things that you need to keep in mind when you are going to put wallpaper in your project and install wallpaper. So we're going to start with the first few things that you need to know about wallpaper. The first one is that when you're looking for a bid for wallpaper, you're gonna want to give the installer as much information. And the best way to not have to do a bunch of back and forth and to give them what they need and to be able to get what you need quickly and efficiently is to provide a certain amount of information. So first of all, you're gonna wanna introduce yourself in an email to your wallpaper installer, and you're gonna wanna let them know your address. That's the first thing. You're gonna say, do you serve this area? This is my address. I have a residential project or a commercial project where we're gonna be installing wallpaper. The second thing is you want to let them know the size of the area to be installed. So you may have measured your wall, you may have photos of your wall. Now, taking pictures is so easy. It's not challenging to snap a few pictures with your phone and attach them to the bid and just say, this is the room we're going to be installing. We want to install on the ceiling only, or we're going to do 2 walls that are, 14 foot wide by 12 feet tall. And you also want to make sure that you do tell them the ceiling height. So regardless of if you're installing on the ceiling or not, they need to know how high, what kind of ladders they're going to need to use, or if they're going to need to get scaffolding if you have very, very high ceilings. So first thing is you want to let them know where you're located and find out if they serve that area. The second thing is you want to let them know the size of the area that they're going to be installing. So they can, for 2 reasons, of course, is that they can judge the amount of time that it's going to take them to install, but then also it gives them a little bit more information about your project. The next thing that you want to include in your request is to let them know if your walls are smooth or not. If you have texture on your walls, it's very, very important that you have the walls smoothed over before you install the wallpaper. Some installers do include this service and add it. Of course, it would be additional, but some of them don't even perform the service. So sometimes you would need to have a handyman or a drywall or painting company come out ahead of time and have them smooth over your walls to prepare the wall for wallpaper. If you have thick wallpaper, sometimes people specify a heavy vinyl wallpaper, it's called type 2 wallpaper, then you can sometimes get away with installing over a textured wall, but I highly, highly discourage this behavior. It's not like one of those things where, the experts say not to do this because they're trying to, a little cover their ass or something. No, it's going to show through the wallpaper if you have a textured wall underneath. So there's no use going through and spending all of your time picking out a beautiful wall covering, spending all of this money purchasing the wallpaper, and then also having it installed for you to not have prepped the wall properly and to install it over a crappy textured wall. So keep that in mind, that the surface that you're installing over is also very important, and it's something that you want to note to the installer when you're requesting a bid and get that information, whether or not you're going to have to pull in a second sub to prep the wall first. Another thing to note is that if you are building a new home or if you're doing a remodel, you want to note which walls are going to get wallpaper ahead of time, because then your your contractor will not texture them, number one, but also they will not paint them. They will leave them completely prepped for level 5 smooth walls, prepped for wall covering, and they won't receive any texture or paint, and so they'll just be ready to go for the installer. You don't want to have to do double duty. So besides giving your address, the size of the project, you also want to make sure to check in if the walls are prepped and let your installer know if that's an add-on, if they do it, and how you're going to get ready for them to show up that day for installation. The next one is, I kind of touched on this, is to have any pictures. So any pictures of the space that you're installing in, you want to include for the installer to give you the quote. Sometimes they'll want to come out anyways to check it out, but it will give them a good idea of where to start. You might even want to give them an idea of if it's on the first floor or second floor, or even what the approach is going to be to the room, because they have big tables that they lay out, and sometimes they have, a big roll on them that'll hold the wallpaper if it's a large area, and they'll need to know kind of where they're laying things out. So even if you had a video and you swiped it around the room, or just did a walk up into the room and let them know kind of where they're going to be working and the conditions, that's very helpful for your installers to be able to give you a good solid quote. All right, the next thing is, do you already have the wallpaper? Are you asking also to purchase wallpaper from them, or do you already have the wallpaper? And if you do already have the wallpaper, or even if you don't, but you already have it picked out, it's a really, really important fact to let them know what wallpaper you're going to be installing. I mentioned early on that there's vinyl wallpaper, there's paper wallpaper, there are, fabric-based wallpapers, materials like, grass cloth. So you want to let them know what they're installing, because it's going to affect your price, number one. It's going to affect the timeline, number two, but also they need to know how they're going to go about doing the installation. So if there's any changes based on the different types of paper, then they're going to, paper or backing or actual material that's on your wall treatment, they're going to need to know that to be able to give you a good hard bid. All right, and the link to the wallpaper. So if you're purchasing it online, or even if you're not, but generally there's some specifications online, you want to give them all of that information. So you'll send it over to them, with a link or a photo of the wallpaper. And if you haven't already purchased it, then they can help you determine your takeoff to decide how much wallpaper you need and how many, we call them drops. So every roll down, every strip down the wall is called a drop, and it's not a straight up square footage measurement when you're looking for wallpaper. You need to know how wide the wall is. You divide the wall by the width of the wall by how wide each drop or segment of the wallpaper is going to be. And then if there's a pattern on the wallpaper, you need to work out whether you need a little bit extra here and there. So the wallpaper specifications will tell you what's called a repeat. And the repeat is how often there is a new piece of the pattern. So if anybody's watching on YouTube, if you are not only joining us on the podcast on audio, if you look behind me in my office here, we have this wallpaper, and you can see that there's this brocade symbol here. And so the repeat for this wallpaper would be how often there's another of that same pattern. And what that's going to do is it'll help the installer know how much wallpaper they need to be able to line up each drop. So there aren't any seams visible because my wallpaper installer did an amazing job. So I can't show you, very close up here, but you can just see that it's important when you're measuring how much wallpaper that you determine, or that you know what your pattern repeat is. Now, if it's a solid pattern, or it has a very small pattern, it's not a big, bold geometric pattern, then you can certainly buy less, and you have less to worry about matching up each seam on each vertical column or drop, we call them. So your installer should be able to help you figure out what the quantity of wallpaper you need, and or if the quantity that you purchased is the correct amount based on what the actual specific specification of the wallpaper is. Now, one more thing that I want to mention when you're talking about how much wallpaper to buy or doing your takeoff is that it's important to buy a little bit extra. And you want to do this so that in the event that you have any kind of issues during your installation, and or if you have any issues later on, that you have an extra roll or two that was made at the same time of your original order. All of the materials that you see in homes have a dye lot, and really any colored material has a dye lot. And so there is a specific, color, let's see, the specific color that's run on the press at that time. Or if it's hand painted wallpaper, then it was a certain batch of paint that was mixed up at a certain time. And you want to make sure that you buy enough of the wallpaper and a little bit extra so that you have any extra in the event that there are any challenges or issues. If you were to purchase your wall covering and put it up and say that you measured wrong and you need an extra roll, there is no guarantee that buying one extra roll at a different time is going to be the same exact color. So there could be a little bit of shade variation, or you could have just a little bit, some of it could be striated, or there could be a light or dark. It just depends, but there's no confirmation that you'll get the same dye lot. If you do find yourself in a situation where you didn't order enough or you ordered more, say that you wanted to do one wall and you're like, you know what, I really love this, I want to do a second wall. Well, if it's not on the same exact surface, if they're adjacent surfaces, it might be okay. They might not matter because the light will reflect differently off of the others. But if you do need to make another additional purchase for the same area, I would highly recommend reaching out personally to the company. Even if you're ordering online, reach out to customer service and let them know your first order number and ask them if they have any that are in the same dye lot that they sent you on the first order. And the company should know that. So there's a chance that this wouldn't be possible if you are ordering custom made to order. Potentially, if you're ordering something digitally printed, that they're printing it on demand as you order, then there isn't anything that was sitting on the shelf from that previous run. But if you're ordering from a large warehouse manufacturer, wallpaper manufacturer, then there isn't a chance that you can get the same dye lot and that there is more sitting around that was made at the same time. So those are the few tips that I wanted to give about wallpaper. If you are going to go it alone and you want to kind of step out, these are some things that will help you not get tripped up and not to be scared. I want everyone to be confident in their interior selections, and I want you to feel comfortable making some bold choices and to branch out and try something different. So when you're selecting wallpaper, keep in mind to, reach out to your installer and let them know your location. Let them know the size of the area that you want to install, including the ceiling height. Make sure that you let them know if the walls are prepped or the condition of the walls, or if they need to add it to the quote, or if they don't do the wall prep, that you make sure that you have someone come out ahead of time to do the wall prep and that you get that additional quote. The next one is to make sure that you include even a video of the space or additional pictures of the room, not just the wall that's going to be wallpapered or the place that's going to be wallpapered, so that they can understand where they're going to be staging and setting up and how their workflow is going to go with their large tables and their supplies. And if you already have the paper, if you don't, if you know what paper you want to have installed, to make sure to give them the complete full specification. So a link to the spec online would be great, or let them know that you don't have a wallpaper selected and you either need their help or you need a recommendation for somebody to help you find what the wallpaper is. And the last one is to remember the repeat on the wallpaper, to look up all the specifications to make sure that you get enough and order the right amount at the first time that you order, so that you make sure that you don't have any issues with your dye lot and that you have some, we call it attic stock, that you have an extra roll or two in the closet or the attic for a rainy day. If you run into the wall, if you have a hole in the wall, if you get a scrape on it, and you need to repair a portion of your wall that has wallpaper. So I hope that these tips have helped you out with your wallpaper selections to give you some confidence and give you the opportunity to go and install some wallpaper in your home. Thanks for joining me on this episode of your favorite interior design podcast.